If you smelt it, he probably dealt it. Here's a look at the Mattel Masters Universe Revelation Stinkor. What's that smell? If it's overpowering enough to overwhelm a steaming pile of garbage, that can only mean one thing: Stinkor. Ever the outcast, the rancid wretch disappeared from Skeletor's side, only to be found hoarding ancient artifacts in his putrid pigeon of a hideout. Emitting odors foul enough to bring any hero to their knees, never underestimate the savage stench of Stinkor. Before we begin, if anybody, by the way, has noticed a strong smell emitting from the studio, it's only because I'm cooking eggs in the kitchen right now, preparing a large platter of deviled eggs. You have smelt it, I've admitted, I've dealt it, but I haven't dealt it in such the way that you think. I'm making deviled eggs. Probably should have done it on a different day, but nonetheless, I think I handled that rather well. Let's go ahead now and grab the ruler just to see how tall Stinkor stands. And the answer to that is about 7 inches in height, and the answer to that is about 17 and a half centimeters tall. Asking if I have any figures to compare along with Stinkor? Yes, I can bring in right now Skeletor. That was, of course, from the Revelation line. I don't know about, looking at these figures, I feel like Stinkor is so considerably better than both the Skeletor and the He-Man that we got before. And it's still one of the reasons why I continue to want to pick up these Revelation figures. It's also because of this guy right here, Fisto. Doesn't have to necessarily be Fisto, but just the idea that these newer figures, they're doing great stuff over at Mattel. And also for another comparison, because it's fun after all, we can bring in the Masters of the Universe Origins Stinkor, who's having some difficult time standing. It probably could be just the amount of smell that's going around right now. Deviled eggs, man. It's deviled eggs. Promise. But at least that gives you an idea of how the new Revelation Stinkor stacks up with other Revelation figures and even himself from the Origins line. Opening up the studio windows and getting a closer look at the accessories to come include with Stinkor. First of which, the figure comes included with a shield. The shield is nicely molded, although I don't think it's molded in blue plastic. It may actually still be blue underneath this, but I have a feeling, a sneaking suspicion, that they have actually in fact gone in there and painted it the more richer blue that we're seeing right here, judging by the way the creases. See, the sculpted section right here tends to have a more of a darker color. That's the part, of course, when the paint is brushed across it. The crevices and the little creases tend to be the more darker areas. That usually is the telltale sign that something's been painted in blue, not just molded. This can, of course, fit into his hand. It can fit right now in this hand. Can't so much fit in this hand, although to be really fair, you easily could just run his fist straight through it, and he kind of just hold it like this. But the best approach to deal with this shield problem, after all, is just feed this over top of his forearm, and then sort of just navigate the fingers around the strap section. It's not something that you can probably do the first time, but just a little bit of dedication, determination on your part. You can get the fingers around that. I don't know why I'm saying this. I'm having such a problem doing it, but take my word for it. Please, hopefully, take my word for it that it does fit around his fingers. There we go. That's exactly what I wanted. Took a little longer to do that, but we got to the destination. Stinkor does hold the shield. And you can actually really do that on the other side, too. If you didn't want to have to deal with the fists, then the figure also comes included with a couple of other swappable hands, too. Just get his feet to be a little bit leveled flat. There we go. If you like this and wanted this here, then the figure also comes with the other version of that as well, a mirror flipped copy. You easily can just detach this hand right here and remove it and replace it with this hand instead. The figure also comes included with the Will Smith hand. Oh, are we really going with that? That joke is going to be so dated several years from now. A flat, relaxed hand can be attached to Fisto's forearm, and it goes on this side here, not this side here. So stern saying that. The figure also comes included with a swappable head, and I think to first do the job, I'm going to remove the fist first, just to get that out of the way. The figure, like I said, does come included with an alternate head sculpt, and that is the one that he actually has with the gas mask. For the what little time we see of Stinkor in the series, he's only in it for, a minute or so, battling Teela in like a junk heap. I wish he could have been in the actual series a lot longer, because I really like the look of Stinkor. But if you did want to have him wearing the gas mask, they do technically include a mask that looks to be not that much different of a head sculpt, other than just the mouth being molded slightly different. To change out the head sculpt, just remove the head quite easily, a nice satisfying pop when it pops off the ball joint, and just replace it with a new head. Put it on top of the ball joint. There we go. Is it all the way there? I don't think it is. I don't think it is. There we go. And you get this look right here, which looks fine. I mean, it does the job nicely. Getting to show you guys a closer look at what that looks like. He kind of looks a little bit like an owl as well. Part skunk, part owl, all smelly. That's that look if you want. I still kind of prefer more the OG look, though, with the visible teeth. But I do appreciate the fact that they actually included 2 head sculpts to work with. Just, again, removing that from the ball peg and just popping the original one back in place. Yeah, that works a lot better for me, at least. Armor-wise, they didn't change too much, really, from the original vintage toy. And we don't have a vintage toy, but we certainly have the next best thing. Here's what he looks like next to the Origins Stinkor. And while most of it does still stay the same, the one thing they did do, though, was mute the colors. So if more the brighter, vibrant orange was on the Origins figure. Let's just bring that down a little bit. They've gone more of a softer orange here on the torso. I gotta say, it actually works well for the figure. The thing I don't like necessarily about it, and you really see more the stark comparison when we have this guy in frame, is I don't like that they've gone with such a muted coloring of black. It's not even quite black either. It's really a dark brown. You can see right there, a real difference between the two. I find results in this, because they went with the more softer brown instead of a stark black, is I find some of his features don't stand out as much. I mean, the eyes are nicely painted with those little slits in the middle of his yellow eyeballs. But I gotta say, I don't think I'm liking the dark brown as much as I would have liked if they had just gone straight black. Straight black. The stripes certainly would have stood a lot more. I feel like his face seems a little bit more softer, being that they didn't go and decide to use the black instead. It's a nice looking head sculpt. I've really no complaints whatsoever with the way they've molded and painted the figure, other than just the coloring of the fur. Again, you can kind of really see when you see it up close like this. Not quite black, is it? It's kind of more of, again, that really, really, really dark brown. One thing that's really interesting about Stinkor that the original figure didn't have is he has these tanks on the back of it that allows him to breathe. I guess he can't even stand his own smell. The tanks, I thought, were removable. In fact, you can kind of see, this one right here, looks like there's a peg that's underneath. But it also looks like they've been glued in place. And this one just was easier to free than this one right here. I think the one time you do this, you're going to have problems keeping them in place after that. This one's pretty stuck in place. This one is very loose, and it's probably just because I've been pulling it off. I wonder even why they had to take the tanks and have them removable in the first place. Maybe it's because they did want to use this torso for another piece down the road, and maybe that's why they wanted to have the tanks as separate pieces. The tanks are nicely painted, done in that same blue color that we looked at earlier for his mask. And again, it just plugs into place. I'm probably going to have to put a little bit of glue or something on that just to keep it from falling off. This one's fine. This one, see, I was too busy pulling it all the time, and eventually it just came right off. Should have just left it well enough alone. The torso piece technically can be removable. It's a softer plastic that would have been put over top of an existing body underneath. I'm trying to think of actually what right now they would have put out there that it would have used this same fur body. Possibly Beastman, although Beastman I think is a bigger build. I'm sure at some point they probably will be using this body for a later released figure down the road. The fur loincloth down below is not quite the same color, no, it isn't, than the original Origins figure. Very bright orange on this one, as well as lower bright boots. Instead, he swaps it out with much easier on the eyes, softer brown, a more softer, easier to read burgundy, and he's also got that burgundy color both on his boots and also on his gloves. It's a really, really nice looking figure. The reasoning why I'm really getting on board getting the Revelation figures is now that they have announced more expansion of the, that Masterforce, Mattel Master Universe Masterforce. I think, is that what it's called? The Masterforce? Just looking at the packaging. Masterverse is what it's called. While we are getting so far announced a He-Man, a 40th anniversary He-Man as well, and also a Skeletor, I don't suspect that they're probably going to be giving that same treatment to every single character that has made up the world of Master Universe. So I would imagine that maybe we won't be getting a Stinkor of that same style, that really now's the best time to kind of be picking up these Revelation figures, because I really think that that's going to be filling in those slots of those figures that we won't be getting later on. All the more reason why I think getting Stinkor, getting Scareglow, and of course getting Fisto from this wave. You don't have to get the other one. No, you don't have to get the other one. But the other one, like, these figures are great looking figures. Let's have a look at the articulation now for Stinkor. First of all, his head rotates all the way around. It's going to be, yes, a little bit harder to rotate that just because this torso piece is going to be in the way. This was, I think, also used for Mechaneck, and I don't know if we are going to be getting a Mechaneck, but I would imagine Mattel's got things planned, I'm sure, long term, that I'm sure they're probably going to be using this at some way, shape, or form for a Mechaneck down the road. But because this part sticks out, it does mean it's going to be a little bit more problems for poor Stinkor to rotate his head. It rotates all the way around, yes. It does go up. It does go, well, down. That's as far down as it really can go, and it also goes back and forth. His arms aren't limited at all, at least by the torso piece. You can easily bring those out at a 90-degree angle bend. You can rotate those arms, yes, all the way around. He does have a swivel in the bicep. Figure has a double hinge on the elbow. And figure also has rotations and hinges on each of the individual hands. Upper torso ball joint, lower torso waist swivel, legs split out. You may also see they've put nice little slit cuts there on the side of the fur. That helps to kind of open things up when it comes to moving those legs outward. You can take the legs, move them forward. You can take those legs and still move them out. There goes the tank. Three quarters up the way up the thigh. It's a swivel cut. Figure has a double hinge on the knee. Articulation here for the boot where it's been attached. Ankle articulation this way. And ankle articulation that way. I knew I should have just left the tank well enough alone. Why did I pick at it? Why did I pry at it? Now I'm going to have a slightly looser tank on the back of Stinkor. Love the look of Stinkor, though. I've always had kind of really a soft spot for Stinkor, not necessarily the smell. And by the way, just in case you are curious, this figure has no smell whatsoever. They did do somewhat of a job doing that with the Origin Stinkor, although it doesn't really read as much as skunk smell, as it sort of just smells like artificial plastic. And while it doesn't have the smell feature that this one does have, it certainly does give you a more modernized look of Stinkor. Really, again, getting the vibes of the Master Universe Classics. This sort of now, for me, represents the Master Universe Classics line, just a new interpretation of it. You, again, detach yourself from the notion of these being with the Revelation cartoon. That's if you didn't like the Revelation cartoon. If you liked the Revelation cartoon, then, I mean, I'm sure these are going to be an easy pickup for you guys. But if you didn't like the cartoon, just don't look at it in that perspective. Look at it as more for the fact that you're getting a really nice looking Stinkor. Slightly taller, well, quite considerably taller than the Origins one that we got before. A lot better of an articulation, a lot better of a sculpt, and a really great looking painted figure, other than just the fact I wish the figure could have had a darker black instead of the darker brown that they went with. Other than that, though, a really nice looking figure. Granted, yes, Smelly Owl Stinkor doesn't possess that pungent aroma that made the original vintage figure so popular, but it still keeps a lot of the same design elements in place. It's based on Master of the Universe Revelation, of course, a two-part series that would have aired over on Netflix. But I don't think that's one of the reasons why people are now collecting this figure line. It's certainly not the case for me. I'm collecting this not because I was a fan of Revelation. I'm not going to be either that hypocrite that boycotted this series either, saying that that's not my He-Man. I watched both Part 1 and Part 2, and there were things, of course, I did like about Part 1 and Part 2, more the beginning, more the end, and sort of that blurring in the middle of what are we doing with the direction of these characters, especially He-Man. But to the credit of that series, that I said it already in an earlier review of Fisto, to the credit of that series, great animation, and they kept to the design of the classic-looking characters. And even though, unfortunately, Stinkor was only in the series, really, when you think about it, for like a minute or two, that was it. It still left a lasting impression that they kept it to its classic roots. And, speaking of classics, again, one of the reasons why I think many people are still collecting the Revelation figures is because they're tied to the look of the classics figures. The original classics Stinkor, for example, had two swappable head sculpts, one of which had a breathing gas mask. So they sort of have now nicely carried that over to the Revelations Stinkor. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the look of Stinkor here. You can still keep to the more unmasked head sculpt, which I'm probably going to do when it comes to displaying him. But I do appreciate at least that Mattel included two different head sculpts that you can change your mind if you want to. This one does also come included with the shield, sort of a throwback to the original vintage figure. And this one also does have gas tanks on the back of its torso. Just a word of the wise. Don't start prying it off like I did. Don't make that mistake, because now one of the tanks is loose. I'm going to have to glue that in place. But I love the look of Stinkor, and I love the idea of buying this Stinkor at retail price. The figure was about $25 to $26. I ended up ordering online. I say retail, but I ordered it online. but I would much rather pay the $25 to $28 for Stinkor than to pay the 300 plus price point that a Classics Stinkor is going for online. Save your money. Don't go that route. And if you want to still that 7-inch scale Masters Universe, go the route of the Revelation figures, especially considering that Mattel is going to be expanding the Masterverse. Well, we already are knowing that we are going to be getting the illustrated design, kind of throwback He-Man and throwback Skeletor to the way they were originally drawn out. We are also getting the 40th anniversary He-Man. I think they've also teased a Hordak. I don't suspect that we are going to be getting a Fisto. I certainly don't suspect that we're getting a Scareglow. And sad to say for Stinkor, I don't think we're going to be getting any other 7-inch scale Stinkors. So again, if you are looking to track these down, track them down now. Don't track them down later on and say, why am I paying $400 for a Revelation Stinkor? Don't do that. Buy them right now. What do you guys think of Stinkor? Let me know down below in the comment section. And, speaking of owls, we were at the beginning of this review, I kind of was talking about he looked a little like an owl. Have there ever been an owl character in Eternia? If there was, what would you name him? Let me know down below in the comment section. We'll have a little bit of fun with that. If you are new to this channel, check off a few things on your checklist. First of all, have you subscribed? That's a crucial one. Have you also turned on the bell notification? That's also a good one too. And the more painful of the three, have you also kept your peepers peeled? While we have wrapped up the reviews for Stinkor, ouch, peeling peepers, that's never a good thing. Make sure, yes, you're keeping your peepers peeled because we will be looking at the review of Scareglow. His review will be right around the corner. For those waiting and holding their breath for Andra, don't hold your breath for that long. You're going to pass out. Probably never going to pick up Andra. But lots of stuff coming your way, guys. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.